right, we are now live. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us out there live on Facebook. My name is Ernestine Lyons, and I am the host of Quick to Politic, the social commentary show that explores history, politics, and all things global meets local. So I have a very esteemed, very special guest here, the host of Authentically Detroit. We have Orlando Bailey, and we have Donna Davidson. So I'm just gonna read a little bit about them respectively, of course. So Donna Davidson is the president and CEO of Eastside Community Network, and she has served in that role since 2016. And has secured more than $2 million in funding for sustainability efforts and all of the community engagement. And she has more than 35 years of nonprofit leadership experience. And then she's also a lecturer at Columbia School of Professional Studies. Did I read that right? When do you have time to sleep? So that's a very busy woman. I'm super excited to have her here on Quick to Politic. And in addition, we have Orlando Bailey, and he is an award-winning journalist, Emmy award-winning, I believe it is, and is passionate and an advocate for the residents of the city of Detroit and their lived experience. And of course, you've been engaging in the art of storytelling since the days of Cornetta Lane's Dinner for 30s, and that's when I first met you. And he was just a real, treat to be a part of that. And I have to say, you have a real knack for storytelling. I'm a fan of the Authentically Detroit podcast. So tell me a little bit more about yourselves, and we'll start with you, Donna. And then, if I missed anything, Donna and Orlando, please tell us about yourselves, and then tell us a little bit more about the story of Authentically Detroit.
Okay. Well, I've been at this for a while. I've got started in the 1980s at a pandemic time when it was HIV/AIDS. I worked in an HIV/AIDS prevention organization that was started health department, and had a real opportunity to work with people from all walks and build synergy around efforts to make change in our community. And I am proud to say that I was part of efforts that kept HIV/AIDS from really exploding in our community like many others. So we had it, lots of people died, but the data around what Detroit was going to like, many more predicted to, lives were predicted to have been lost. So COVID-19, where we had many more deaths than we should have with, we did not. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that people work together to educate and to come up with ways to intervene. So that got me started. I've worked with a number of nonprofits, left for a while and managed charter schools, came back to nonprofits. I actually got my start at Warren County Development Coalition, which is the legal name for Eastside Community Network, in 1993. Working with Nikki DeSantis, who is, a great teacher of community development and ways to build power in the community, and Angela Brown Wilson, who is another great leader who now serves as COO. Very passionate about causes, those things where finally the politics of our time have caught up to, I'm finally feeling like I'm in sync with local politics, or at least the young people. Even though I'm far from millennial, I think that I've been trying to fight some of the battles around respectability, around economic justice and social justice, all of my life. And sometimes it feels like you're swimming upstream. But at this point in time in 2022, people are starting to see the impact of a lot of policies that they were blind to in the past, and we're now starting to work on them. And when you talk about when I sleep, I'm really passionate about these causes, about teaching, about learning, about gathering people together, and about trying to make change where we can, because I continue to believe that there are better ways for us to interact in our communities, and there are better things that we can strive for from a political policy standpoint, but we can't do it if we continue to be blinded to the truth. So I see myself as wanting to speak truth to power at every opportunity. And so I was really fortunate to not only join Eastside Community Network, but to be introduced to Orlando Bailey, who at that time was a community engagement coordinator. And, we just connected. And so Orlando, it's on you.
Yeah, I like to say that we know that it takes a village to raise a child, and I am a product of an amazing village, a village of men and women in my family, but also a village of men and women in community. Eastside Community Network is an organization that I literally grew up in. Started in the Youth on the Edge of Greatness program when I was yay high, maybe 11 years old, and they they could never get rid of me. And so when I got home from college in 2011 and I needed a job, because I couldn't get a job in broadcasting because the route to that would have been me leaving Detroit to start in a smaller market. And I had no desire whatsoever to leave the city of Detroit. Maggie DeSantis gave me a job and continued on in her role as one of my greatest teachers in the community development sector. But it was during my time at Eastern Michigan University where I watched Detroit from down the street on 994 in Ypsi go through a series of changes, from municipal corruption probes to, overturning a couple times over to a brand new city council, to us headed into the largest municipal bankruptcy that this nation had ever seen, seeing democratic power stripped away from Black people in the city of Detroit, and watching this snowball effect of narrative and storytelling about my city, about my family, about the people who raised me, being the personification of death, decay, and dilapidation, which I knew was diametrically opposed to my Detroit experience. And so as I'm studying journalism at Eastern Michigan University, I began to study the narratives about Detroit and why that was. And even though I came home and worked in community development for 8 years, that skill, that active listening, that framing, that storytelling is something that I employed throughout all of my years there to not only build relationships, but to amplify the voice and expertise of the resident as expertise, not alternative expertise, not not professional expertise, but expertise, period. And it was in 2020 where I officially made the switch to the industry of journalism, going to work for bridgedetroit.com. And the rest is history. But even while still at ECM, Donna let me spread my wings a little bit, and really allowed me to produce the Authentically Detroit podcast, and co-founded it with her in 2019. And we did not know what we were doing, and we did not know that it would become a mainstay when we talk about the discourse in the city of Detroit, right? A teaching tool for anybody who wants to learn about the city of Detroit. I'm constantly hearing, hey, I gave someone your podcast who wants to know more about the city of Detroit. I don't take that lightly. And I also began at, Donna's encouragement and support, convening people to have critical conversations about cities with the Urban Consulate. And so really, coming into my own there and being able to blossom afterward. But it is a result of amazing teaching and mentorship, first of Maggie DeSantis, but then Donna Davidson. She was my CEO, but she was my mentor. She was is still one of my greatest teachers. And now I'm super privileged that I'm able to call her my friend and colleague. So,
Orlando and I used to talk a lot. I talk a lot anyway, about politics. And, so we talk a lot about what was going on in the community. And there's so many things that we wish people knew, right? The organization used to have the Pipeline newspaper, this great big picture, to actually ship our newspaper overseas and have them print them here and pass it on to the community so that we could inform the community, so that we could help to shape the narrative around some of these stories. And all the news was not coming from these, commercial news stations. Before I got to EC in the Pipeline, sort of People stopped reading newspapers as much. The cost of paper was too high. And the question was, how do we communicate now? And we thought podcasting, right? What if we had a podcast? Might also early year, a year maybe before I started these tours.
I just wanted to
This
say
is
that you're breaking up just a little bit, Donna. But I think that, in the meantime, you definitely hit a very good point about, and you guys chose the perfect time to launch the podcast in 2019, so that it was, there once folks needed it during the pandemic when we couldn't gather to have those conversations, like, at the Urban Consulate. And I just wanted to interject and say that, it's just like a perfect timing for those conversations.
Yeah, it really was. But we really just
That's
wanted to communicate. I'm sorry, I turned off my photo. Hopefully that improves the quality.
Yes.
But we really just wanted to communicate public, right? We really just had some conversations we wanted to share with the people in our community. And we thought, let's talk about the kinds of issues we talk about in the conference room, water cooler conversations for us. And some people might be like, water cooler conversations? That's what you all talk about around water cooler? No Real Housewives. Yeah, that's what we're into. Like, let's talk about this issue.
They were conference room conversations because we would be in that conference room for hours.
For hours, right? And then we just, and so over the years, I've been on many people's shows. I've been on Let It Rip. I've been on late Steve Hood used to have a number of shows. Whenever was on those shows, people say, you should have your own show. I was on 10 a.m., a few times. You should have your own show. But I was never really interested in working for that kind of media. The idea of the podcast was sort of liberating because we could speak our truth and not have to worry about other people really controlling the narrative and selling to advertisers and all that kind of stuff that kinds of
censors you, and it says, oh, well, you can't say that because our sponsors or because our advertisers, and the station won't like that.
Exactly. And so we really wanted to be free, and we wanted to talk to interesting people, some of the interesting people we talk to all of the time, and let other people hear about it. I think there's nothing more true than the fact that we were completely shocked when we found out that listening, and we found out people who work for the city of Detroit were listening and actually liking our show. In Scotland reached out to me a couple years ago and said, hey, we listen to you all the time, suggesting things to me. I'm like, what is going on? One of our friends, there was somebody from France who was listening. And so you Google, you see Detroit, and he comes for every letter in the alphabet. So maybe that helps, but we started getting a following.
No, I think it's authentic conversation. And honestly, like, as a fan of the show, right after like the primary election, which, I couldn't wait to hear your hot take on it. And, of course, that's going to be one of the questions that comes up tonight, too. I kind of want to know what you guys, think how the election's gonna go, and thoughts on all of that. And, but it's just like, it's where people want to head to find out what the real conversation is and what real Detroiters think, because, Orlando kind of touched on something where, it's about engaging the people, and it's about including the people of Detroit in these conversations. And I've been around a lot of tables and at the sitting at the table and having these conversations with, leadership and leaders in Detroit, and fancy people sitting around kind of trying to figure out what is the future of Detroit's workforce, what is the future of Detroit's, economic development. And, you can't necessarily prescribe solutions without engaging the people and having these direct conversations with community leaders who are on the ground doing the work. And so, I really commend you guys for, I mean, like, I can't say it any other way, have an authentic Detroit conversation with people that really are doing the work.
Who better to, advise on how to solve issues and problems than the residents and the people who are directly experiencing the issue, the problem, the inequity. Oh my gosh, they have ideas. And it's a shocker to so many people within the chambers of power. And so even with how ECN's work is structured, especially when we talk about the Lower East Side Action Plan Coalition, all of that work is completely resident driven, right? When we talk about thinking about the future directions of neighborhoods and what we want our neighborhoods to be, we arm residents with the information needed to make intelligent decisions. And guess what? They make amazing decisions. The boards and the steering committees and the subcommittees of the LEAP Coalition are all chaired and convened by residents, right? And so there is, I think that's the magic, right? I remember speaking, as the chief development officer at ECN around a lot of at conferences and things that were happening around town, telling them just, how we do it. And people were flabbergasted that we're able to do it. And I'm saying to them, y'all, what other way is there? There is no other way.
But I think almost all the conversations about Detroit, this helps. I moved to another room, come from a deficit standpoint, right? What's wrong with Detroit? What's wrong with these people? Why don't they get job training? We put the onus of racism and injustice on the people who are impacted by racism and injustice, and not by the people who create and maintain systems of racism and injustice. And so when you come at it from the narrative stance of our people are great, our people are wonderful, our people are survivors, our people are creators, our people are creative, and our people are loving, and our people are joyful, our people are good, then you have to say there's got to be some other explanation for the brokenness. It's not the people, it's the systems and the conditions that the people are in. And so if you really believe in the people, let them lead. We have done so many exciting things, building capacity in people and watching them blossom. It is the most exciting part of every day for me when I see a resident who we've invested training in, who we've given a little bit of money to, $2,000, $3,000 to work on their dream, taking that dream to new realities, getting honored in many stages in the city of Detroit, attracting new funding, bringing neighbors around and showing, look what I can do if you give me a chance. And these are everyday average Detroiters, because the average Detroiter has capacity. Got to stop internalizing messages that some of us are smart and some of us aren't. Some of us are good, some of us aren't. A small minority of people who are not working, trying to make good things happen. And I'm going to say this final thing: when the city turned out the lights to talk, when bankruptcy happened, Detroiters stood tall. We would not have the Detroit we have without people putting their eyes on the streets and making sure good things happen. And it says my internet is unstable. I apologize for that.
Yeah, no worries. We heard the message loud and clear, where it's just like, and I love that you said, we have to stand tall, because there are so many systems at play that folks don't necessarily realize that, you can't just say that a group, it's your problem, or it's your fault that the city is this way, or, you can't do all of this, buck passing and scapegoating, because when are you actually engaging with folks to see, how they're making their communities better, in their own ways? And I remember being on a call where, there was like this conversation around like, how do we make things better? And it's by not bringing in people with master's degrees to tell us, what their urban planning studies said that you should do to make your city work. It's, all cities engage in master planning. All cities should be collecting that feedback from the residents and seeing what they're already doing that's working, and applying that to the systems that can help to foster, that sense of, okay, well, this is what the residents said they want to do. This is what they're willing to do. And this is how we're going to, row in the same direction with the resources that can come with, say, some fancy person, with a master's degree in planning and all of this data and everything. Let's yes, let's mine this data. Yes, let's use the tools, but let's also get input from the people who are on the ground doing the work.
If any Black person in the United States whose families have been here for a while, just about any, not every single one, goes back a couple of generations, our people were working as laborers, our people were enslaved, our people were working sharecropping on farms. Are we thinking that intelligence just entered our family lives when we went to college? Are we thinking that our great-grandfathers weren't as smart as we were, our great-grandmothers weren't as loving as we are? Or do we accept the narrative that the difference between them and us is opportunity? And that some people who are walking right alongside us right now don't have that opportunity in 2022. And if we
It looks like Donna has her internet connection may be a little spotty, but I think I can finish the point for her because her internet went out, and it is an assault to our ancestors, right? To say that we have come into knowledge and we have come into expertise because we have a piece of paper that says we have a degree or some sort of traditional academic expertise. And I think that the way that, Authentically Detroit, and the way that I think Donna and I both approach our work, number one is honoring our ancestors who were locked out of that opportunity, but still still survived. In order to survive some of the systems that are habitually offending and oppressing us, right? There is a level of intelligence, there is a level of skill and stick-to-itiveness that is required. There's a level of rigor that is required. And so we want to honor that. And so many of our residents carry that same spirit. So many of our residents on the East Side have the spirit of grandma and the spirit of grandpa and great granny. And for me, as a storyteller, as a journalist, I see it as my job and duty to ensure that that voice, that perspective is on the record. Because years from now, there may be a curious little boy who will remind me of myself as a curious little kid, looking for his stock, looking for affirmation of who he is, and really couldn't find it. But what we are doing, and I think what we're trying to do, is when Donna's great-great-grandchild types her name in the search bar on Google years from now, they're going to see her, they're going to hear her. They're going to hear her expertise. They're going to hear what she stood for. They're going to hear the residents that she talked to and the resident voice that we amplify. And that is so powerful. They're going to hear the abundance that Donna was talking about, not the deficit, but we start out of this place of asset. We start out of this place of abundance. And we are an amazing people.
Yeah.
Amen.
I was in a meeting today and somebody was asking about how the families were doing, how the people were doing in their community. And one person spoke up and they talked about what everybody didn't have, what they couldn't do, what they weren't. And it was so negative. And so I was trying to figure out how I was supposed to respond to that same question. And I understand people struggle. I know people are lacking things, but it was really hard for me to think of people through the lens of deprivation and not having, they don't have adequate housing in a lot of instances, people don't, but that's not how I see people. And I think people don't want us to be seen that way. I think people want you to see their struggles, but they want to be seen as whole. Well, it's really, really interesting.
Did we lose you? All right. Oh, Orlando, I think
we got to do this again.
Yes,
like,
yes, we do. Yes, we do. Exactly. Like, or in person, or maybe, I don't know, like I come and join you guys. But
Yes.
I kind of wanted to pivot into another question that's kind of a two-parter. So I know that one of the folks who was super excited and saw you guys were going to be on Quick to Politic and it's like, oh, my favorite people from Authentically Detroit. She wanted to know, how can the average Detroiter become more civically engaged? And I wanted to add in to that, what would be the mission, vision, and kind of like impact long-term of Authentically Detroit has existed for, since 2019. And so in 10 years down the line, what will exist because Authentically Detroit sparked the right conversations and, made an impact? And because of the existence, now we can blank.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think to the first question of what one can do to become more civically engaged. Number one, listen to the podcast. But I would say, the second thing is to ascertain one's capacity to engage, right, and work that capacity, right. A lot of things. It's so funny. Sometimes our civic infrastructure is set up in a way that could be really, really inconvenient to the working person, right? If it's not their job to be like this civic participator, because there's so many things that happen throughout the
You
day.
got work, you got kids, responsibility.
Then you got kids, but I would really, challenge the listener to ascertain where they can plug in and remain plugged in, right? So if you got a job, but there are opportunities to sort of volunteer. I know ECN has Hope Days where they are enrolling folks in the HP poverty tax exemption program. They're always looking for volunteers there. I would say even on the civic infrastructure, a big spoke in civic infrastructure is information, right? How can we democratize information to ensure that people have access, right? There are so many opportunities to help disseminate information to your neighbors that can help them toward thriving in their neighborhoods, that can help them achieve a better quality of life, whether you want to volunteer with a nonprofit newsroom like Bridge Detroit or Outlier Media. There are many information houses that are seeking to reach so many Detroiters, right? Especially those who are extremely hard to reach. As for impact, I will say for the podcast, and I'll of course allow Donna to cast her vision, but I think number one, the impact is already there. What I am seeing, so I gauge impact a few ways. And one of them is this. Donna and I, every week, release a podcast where we opine and provide our commentary and ask rigorous questions around the happenings in and within the city of Detroit, right? One of the metrics by which I gauge impact is if my thoughts that I've articulated over the airwaves come back to me, right? If it comes back to me, if I see my thought, my vision espoused in someone else,
or
right?
it's an action plan. It's in somebody's plan of action or their development.
That's impact. When people are migrating to the city of Detroit, and they say one of the first things that I did was listen to Authentically Detroit to learn about Detroit. That's impact. When I had the opportunity to interview the director of planning and development for the city of Detroit and pressed him on why we don't have an updated master plan and how much money would it take for us to actually get that master plan at least started, and he gave a number, and then a city council person heard that and put that number in the budget so that we can embark upon a master plan for the city of Detroit. That is impact. And so years out, I'm still stuck on today. I'm still stuck on next month. But when we're talking about what we want impact to be, just that. We still want to be impactful. We still want to be impactful in the halls of power. We still want to have commentary that influences, right, the way that people approach and think about their work. We still want to provide commentary and opinions and questioning that influences where money goes, where resources go in this city, right? Donna tells this story all the time, and she's not here to tell it, so I'll tell it. When Kresge Foundation first launched its Kresge Innovative Project money, right? And it was going to organizations like ECN and organizations like Jefferson East Inc., really, really established nonprofit organizations that had multiple buckets of funding from different funders. But I was seeing work on part of grassroots organizations and residents that really desperately could use that money and wasn't getting it. And so I told Brian Hogel at the Kresge Foundation, hey, you need to figure out how to open this up and democratize it, because there are so many people doing the work who ain't getting funded or recognized. And he did just that. That's impact, right? Donna said,
that's powerful.
Donna would say, ECN didn't get a check because of me. But our partners on the grass tops level did. That's impact. And so we will want to see more of that in the next decade.
All right. You know what? And that is beautiful, especially because like right there when you were like, okay, I pressed, the department head for planning and development. And then, a city council person was listening. And then of course it ended up being a line item in the city's budget. That's powerful. That's impactful. And I think that you were right. It's like, it's more about the right now, because sometimes I think we, underestimate what we can do in 10 years and overestimate what we can do in like 1 year. And we kind of get so, caught up in the minutia that we lose sight of, okay, well, the actions right now, all it takes is to keep moving forward. So I think that's truly a powerful way to, for not only Detroiters to recognize, how to be involved, and kind of ties into Deanne's question of like how to like be.
Oh, that's
involved.
Deanne that asked that question.
Yeah, she was. Yep. Deanne Austin. So
and even just to tag on to that, I think a lot of people's first stop is your local community development organization. Go in and see what they're doing and what they're offering.
And the local planning commissions, and seeing like how because I joined the planning commission here in Harper Woods just because I wanted to be involved in politics. And so that's how you can, the little things to join, to be kind of plugged in. And we do have lives that are going on, but you have to do your part, because then you can inform somebody else, and somebody else hears a little something that you're doing, and then they kind of, it reverberates, and it becomes this ripple effect where you don't realize what an impact you're making, and this is why you don't stop. And I really appreciate like what you guys do, because it's so hard when it comes to even like little local elections. And I'm gonna get into like your hot take, and I hope we can try to get Donna back. Maybe she can call in. But
she's on her way back.
Okay, awesome. Because I want to know like a hot take on the election. And that was the one place like I knew I wasn't going to be able to find it on the news. I knew I wasn't going to be able to find, especially talking about, state rep races, talking about state house races. People were going to talk about Congress and things like that, but not even to the degree where it's just unfiltered, and you guys had a guest after her name escapes me, but she was so opinionated about what happened with the race between like Portia and Adam and Shree, and that not a lot of folks are happy with the outcome of that election, no matter what side you were batting for. And so what are your takes on Detroit's representation moving forward with, the congressional races, and, then this, just the election in general, with some of the ballot proposals, the governor's race, and just kind of want to know your opinions on how it's all going to, pan out.
Well, we know that the 13th congressional race feels like it was pretty much decided in the primary with Shree Tanadar beating out State Senator Adam Ollier and Focus Hope CEO Portia Roberson. But there is a challenger on the ballot in the person of Martell Bivings, who is running as a Republican, and he is a resident of the east side of Detroit. Really, really interesting to, sit with this question of Black man and Republican, right? And how does that happen?
Right,
And
right. And I've known
the
Martell from a few spaces where he worked with EGC and yeah, yeah.
because right now we are carrying this tension of the lack of Black congressional representation out of the state of Michigan, specifically out of the city of Detroit. And does Martell Bivings fit the kind of representation that Detroit would want in a Black person? That will be decided in November. I think if Sri advances to DC, at least for the next 2 years, we have to figure out how to work with this man. We have to figure out how to keep him accountable and engage once again in rigorous questions about him, his policies, his politics, and how he leverages and utilizes his vote, along with what his constituent services will look like on the ground. The 12th district, Rashida Tlaib, current Congresswoman, has a challenger. It doesn't look like it's going to be close. And so what does that look like? Rashida Tlaib, North Street Tanadar, they're not Black, but they're also not white. And so that also,
And sorry to cut in, it's just like this whole person of color. Yes, yes.
So that's a level of nuance that also needs to be named. It also needs to be named that we understand that Rashida Tlaib pisses off a lot of Black political elite, and they have a lot, to say about that, right? But the Black voter electorate loves her. What's missing? You understand what I'm saying? And the other hot take that I'll offer really quickly for this election is that, I think Detroiters are more likely to come in contact with a judge on the bench of 36th district than they are to meet Governor Whitmer, the Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist, or any of their state representatives and state senators. Who the heck are these people on the ballot running uncontested for these seats in these judgeships, right? These are the people that are deciding our future. These are people that are deciding and making decisions that will have economic implications for our lives. These are the people that are deciding whether or not we will have driver's licenses or not, and are we going to be
right? How punitive are we going to be in the judicial system?
Work? These are the people that are sentencing our loved ones, right? For, in misdemeanor cases and in criminal cases. Who these folks? And have they come to you? And what kind of questions are you asking? I think for so long, we've gotten along just to get along without really deepening our engagement with these names that are on this ballot. I'm saying no more. I am saying no more. We are more, young people are more than, I was 19 years old when I went in front of a judge in traffic court, scared to death. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, I don't have a lawyer. And I'm standing, and there's a whole process, right? Who decides the rules and how the 36th district courthouse shows up? It's punitive, and you ever been to 36th district? It's inhumane how we're treated sometimes.
It's really just get in, get out, and like you can't speak, you can't talk, you gotta follow the lines, and it's just there's no empathy there.
And I say no more. I say no more. Who are these people? Are we inviting them to our forums? Are we inviting them to show up in the community, not just to smile and kiss babies and have a photo op so that we can say the judge was there? Oh no, let's engage in rigorous dialogue, because these people are deciding the future of our families, of our lives, of our economic states.
Right.
And that can't go unnamed any longer.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Like, have you guys had a chance to speak with any of the judicial candidates, or have they like accepted any,
We have not, but what I know is that the candidates for 36th district are all guaranteed to come in because there's no one really contesting it, right? Especially the incumbents, right? And so these are people that the people on the ballot are going to be people on the bench after November for the most part. We still, even after the election, need to be having these conversations, and I hope we can get at that.
I think so. I think so. And especially because, like, especially with the congressional races, these are 2-year spots. And, we really have to get together. And I think that it'll be important going forward that you don't have, Black representation splitting the vote, and you don't have, so many candidates. And, I don't know, I'm kind of torn because everybody has a right to run for office. Everybody, when I ran for mayor, people were saying, oh, why did you want to challenge, another Black woman? Why did you want to? Because it's a democracy, and, we all have a right to get out there and, present our best, plan for the future, the community, and for what we would like to materialize. And, but it's still, it's when it's that important, I think that there has to be a little bit more consensus. And, but in some cases there was like this,
Was it though? Like I'll push back on that consensus point for a little bit, and in the person of Adam Ollier. And Adam Ollier is a friend to Authentically Detroit. He comes on all the time, and we spar with him when we disagree, and we agree.
I used to work for Adam. I, helped him with his podcast. And so
to what end does a Warren Evans reserve the right to yield political influence and say this is the guy we picked without, in my opinion, real democratic and representative representation in that group that was majority men, right? And old guard. Well, you can't without, a real process and doing more to just say, well, everyone was welcome, after the fact, put a candidate in front of folks and say, this is who we say you need to vote for, so just do it. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work that way. And so I hope that we can learn a lesson from that, right? That the political old guard and the political tide and will of the voters is changing, right?
right.
We don't have, folks in our community anymore that can, like Coleman Young used to do, and say, hey, here's who you need to put in office. And we're like, okay, that's who we're going for. Folks have to provide answers. Adam Ollier had to provide an answer for his voting in legislative record in the state Senate. Adam Ollier had to provide an answer for AIPAC money coming into his campaign, right? There were so many reasons. Adam Ollier had to provide an answer to women who felt sort of marginalized by the process that anointed him the candidate, right? And he does, and he provides those answers. I don't know if the electorate feels like that is sufficient. That's up to him and the electorate to decide. But the political tide is changing, and we have to speak differently. We have to engage differently, and we have to find and come up with a consensus differently than in times past.
Right. And you hit on, well, Donna did talk about this earlier about like challenging respectability politics. And then you hit on a point about how Rashida is beloved by, the base, the voter base, the constituents, but the, Black political elite kind of, they don't necessarily always get along. And maybe it could be that the times have changed. And so that same weight and that gravitas that they once had, in the days of Coleman Young, it doesn't necessarily, politics don't move that way anymore. And, it has to play differently now. And so we have to find a middle ground.
And we need Black representation. I'm not saying that we don't need it.
Right.
But, I would say this with our current representation in the person of Rashida Tlaib. Rashida Tlaib is a born and raised Detroiter. She's a Detroiter. She's not a white person. She's a person of color. And her constituency and voter base feel like she represents their interests in DC. All right.
She's a fighter. She's a fighter.
fighter. We can continue to hold her accountable and ask rigorous questions. I'm going to be interviewing Representative Talib tomorrow morning. She may not like some of the questions that I have to ask her, but these are questions that that will and need to be asked. And so remain engaged, even if your candidate doesn't win. If Sri Tanadar, wins to the detriment of a large amount of people, stay engaged and figure and organize now. 2 years is no time from now, right? No time.
Exactly. Well, we're going to wrap things up, but I do want to get, like, since we're talking about the political hot takes, I am Miss International. I love all things global. And I'm not sure if you've been following, but the UK just went through some stuff where Liz Truss only lasted 44 days in office as prime minister. And now we have the first brown person, first person of color in Rishi Sunak of the new prime minister. And already we've had some folks say like, oh, well, he's he won't represent British people well because he doesn't look like, what Britain looks like. And I'm just like, okay, colonialism. Now you know how it feels. But I just want to know, like, what are your thoughts on the state of the UK? They're dealing with a lot of, energy issues. They're dealing with, they're really feeling the impact of Brexit. So what are your thoughts on the recent developments there?
Well, they're feeling the impact of Brexit because they continue to elect, these really, on the political spectrum, right-wing, political leaders who are polarizing and make what I feel sometimes could, decisions that are detrimental to the people on the ground in the UK. They're seeing inflation rise just like us, and they're also seeing costs go up as a result of Russia's war in Ukraine. Rishi Sunak is of that same, conservative right-wing stock. Right. And so I don't know what will happen. We'll have to see what happens. We saw Liz Truss fire her Treasury Secretary over there that made the economy spiral in a really rapid pace. The budget that she presented was one that worried a lot of folks within the parliament over there. And so for me, it's to be continued. I am watching it closely. I'm also an international nerd. I don't know if you know this, but I am a Marshall Memorial fellow alum with the German Marshall Fund of the United States. And so I'm all about
Really?
that.
Oh, wow.
Atlantic relationship strengthening and keeping in touch with what is happening over there. As far as I'm concerned right now, the only conversation that I'm hearing about Rishi Sunak is not one about his policies and what he would do, but one about his Indian heritage and one about his looks. They think he's attractive. All right. So once we get past that, what you gonna do?
Right. It's not about like, oh, well, this and that. And even sometimes, representation does matter, but like,
Absolutely.
Once you get past that symbolicness of you being the first, it's still, you have a job to do. And, that's important. We, need folks to step up, and they can't just, rest on their laurels and be like, I'm the first.
It's fractured over there. So he's going to have to figure out how to unite the party, because the Conservative Party is severely fractured over there. And I cannot wait to see what comes out of 10 Downing Street.
Right. Well, I want to thank you so much for your hot take on the UK politics, and I'm so excited that I could nerd out with somebody else on this. So I'm just like so interested to see like what's going on, and like so much turmoil and change in such a short period of time, and this giant is just going through so much. But yes, thank you for, engaging in the conversation. And I know that I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about, intergenerational conversations and, just kind of talking about like, I believe Donna is in the, Gen X generation, and you're a millennial.
The last of the boomers.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, she barely made it.
Oh, okay.
Made it.
Barely made it into like,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So she's Gen X adjacent boomer. Okay. But no, I kind of wanted to talk about that because I think it's important, to really start to focus also on, Gen Z rising. They're entering in the workforce. They're in their 20s now. And, those are important conversations, but we're definitely going to have part two. So I want to thank you and Donna for being on the show, and thank you all, the viewers out there for tuning in on Facebook and for watching this on YouTube as well. In addition, thank you for all the listeners out there for the Quick to Politic podcast. And I want to say good night to everyone and thank you so much. And the live is ended. All right. And thank you, YouTube. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe. In addition to listening to Authentically Detroit, tell us where we can find you guys.
So you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, all of the places.
Awesome. And I'm going to make sure that we get that in the live on Facebook and everything. So thank you all for tuning in. And this has been a wonderful episode. Thank you guys so much, from Authentically Detroit to Quick to Politic. Thank you guys so much for being my guests. And have a great night.